Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. Canada's Texas is threatening divorce and could become the 51st state. Alberta leaving Canada is moving from bumper sticker to reality as organizers announced they've collected over 300,000 signatures for a referendum to leave Canada. That's almost twice the signatures needed, triggering a vote in October where Albertans can vote whether to leave Canada, along with a series of questions like voter ID and limiting welfare to migrants. According to prediction market Kalshi, odds of independence are now 1 in 4, which is up from 1 in 10 last December. So the background here is Alberta is basically what happens if Texas marries Wyoming and then gets trapped in an HR seminar run by Ottawa. More important, Alberta is by far the richest province in Canada thanks to roughly 160 billion barrels of oil. That's about 3 times the reserves of the entire United States. That would make Alberta the number 4 reserve in the world, just behind Saudi Arabia. In fact, Alberta is so wealthy, it funds the rest of Canada to the tune of $15,000 a year per household, which bothers Albertans, especially when the rest of Canada is trying to kill Alberta's golden goose, blocking pipelines and imposing carbon taxes to the point Alberta exports just 1/10 the ratio of oil reserves as the U.S. The other half is politics. The rest of Canada looks at Albertans as toothless rednecks, since Alberta is by far the most conservative province in Canada. Last national election, Conservatives won 64% of the vote in Alberta and almost 90% of federal seats. This puts Alberta at constant loggerheads with Ottawa on everything from firearm ownership to free speech and religion. This all came to a head in the 2022 trucker protests against COVID restrictions. In Alberta, crowds lined highways cheering the truckers. In Ottawa, Justin Trudeau seized their bank accounts to try to starve them out while running down grandmothers with riot cops. It's coming to an even bigger head with a bevy of federal hate speech laws that target conservatives and Christians. Multiple Canadian pastors have been prosecuted for criticizing homosexuality, including a former school trustee fined $750,000 and gagged for life for calling transgenderism, quote, biologically absurd, which of course it is. Another Alberta pastor was sentenced to 12 months house arrest for protesting drag queen events for children. Tribunals in BC and Ontario have levied $10,000 fines for misgendering, while Professor Jordan Peterson was famously ordered to pay $25,000 and undergo pre-noun re-education or lose his license. So as sex, if Alberta secedes, the question is, does it go alone as the Saudi Arabia of the North, or does it join America as the 51st state? Odds on Kalshi are running 4 in 5 that an independent Alberta does apply for statehood. Politically, it would be around Texas or Kansas, so red but not super red. Economically, it would also be around Texas or Kansas, smack dab in the middle, but with enormous upside prospects from 10xing oil exports. Alas, new states are subject to the filibuster, and Democrats would obviously block a new red state. At best, they might bundle it with a blue Puerto Rico or D.C. statehood. As for Albertans, whether they go it alone or join the U.S., it would be a vast improvement economically and politically from the abuse they suffered today. The American economy added 115,000 jobs last month, crushing expectations of just 65. Considering our labor force is actually shrinking, deport, baby, deport, that is pure profit. Mainstream media was hardest hit, partly because AP journalists are losing their jobs to ChatGPT, so for them it is a jobs Armageddon. But also because legacy media has been praying to the Ouija board for a Trump crash, hoping Saturn will finally punish the peasants. Not today, Saturn. In raw numbers, the VLS said we gained 115,000 jobs in April, taking average payrolls this year to 76,000 a month in gains, which is about double last year's pace. That left the unemployment rate unchanged at a tame 4.3%, where it's been for roughly a year. The biggest jump was 84,000 blue-collar jobs, with growth in construction, manufacturing, retail, transport, warehousing, mining, and utilities. set against a 17,000 job drop in white-collar jobs, so business services, tech, and finance, along with an 8,000 drop in federal jobs. You love to see it. And 6,000 jobs lost in Hollywood. At this pace, the next Marvel movie will be a raccoon screaming in front of a green bedsheet. Now, I've been arguing Trump 2.0 is a blue-collar renaissance between factory onshoring, deportations, and AI replacing cubicle jobs with physical jobs, which pushes up blue-collar wages. Last month, nailed it. Now, take all this with a grain of salt, since the Bureau of Labor Statistics is notorious for reporting great headlines and then quietly revising them away. And there was a concerning jump in short-term jobless and part-time workers. Still, the big numbers were solid. Wage growth is running 3.5% on the year. Working hours are rising, a sign of future hiring. Quit rates are some of the best since 2014, meaning jobs are plentiful. Interestingly, two big canaries that did not sing all year are tariffs and AI. Both have had almost no impact on jobs. So with tariffs, factory reshoring has been canceled by a loss of low-end manufacturing that was surviving on tariff-struck Chinese gigaws and paying illegals $12 an hour who are now back in Guatemala. On AI, it was supposed to wipe out all the jobs until grandma's on OnlyFans, but in fact, building AI is creating more jobs than it's taking. So grandma is driving a forklift in Tulsa. To illustrate, Challenger Gray estimates 20,000 AI-related layoffs last month, but a typical data center requires 4,000 to 5,000 blue collars to build. There's currently almost 3,000 data centers announced or under construction. So Price Waterhouse pegs that at 4.7 million construction jobs through the AI build-out, of which 500,000 would stay permanent in maintenance because the data centers are not falling out of the sky. They have to be built, and they're not being built by DEI consultants. This all means that over the next decade anyway, AI is creating more jobs, but the new jobs are high-paid blue-collar jobs, turning America into two economies, guys welding steel beams for six figures, and communications majors making TikToks about late-stage capitalism in mom's basement. So what's next? Since Trump took office, jobs have been very solid, considering paper jobs fell by 350,000 federal layoffs, hundreds of thousands more cutting NGO handouts, all while the Fed strangled rates. When the war ends and energy prices come back down, allowing Fed cuts, we could get back to the stellar job growth of Trump's first term that knocked unemployment into the low threes. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold, paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/Prof. St. Ange. That's COINKITE.com/Prof. St. Ange. Okay, back to our show. The British establishment just had their wigs handed to them in local elections, where the right populists won almost as many seats as both ruling parties combined. This is roughly like Trump running as an independent and near matching both the Democrats and the Republicans. Ruling Labor lost 1,500 seats. Think of them like state legislators in the U.S. The establishment conservative, Tories, lost 500, replaced by populist Nigel Farage's Reform Party that went from 2 seats to 1,453, along with anti-establishment Greens, who picked up 400 seats as they become the party of British Muslims and vegan cat ladies. Put it together, and Britain's mainstream parties won just 1 in 3 seats. It's a spectacular rejection of Britain's spectacularly unpopular Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who's currently polling 18%, comfortably ahead of dying of dysentery. But like a true 18% man, Keir said voters are really angry because he hasn't changed things fast enough. As in, voters love his stabby third worlders, two-tier policing, and Facebook gulags. They just want more. So what changes? Alas, these are local elections. National is where all the action's at for migration, police, welfare, jobs, and inflation. So at best, we could see tweaks in DEI and anti-white racism, some pushback to migrant welfare and woke school curriculum, and a lot more transparency with populist wolves in the elite's henhouse. More important, it suggests the clock is ticking for a populist takeover in national elections. Now, being a parliamentary system, Britain doesn't have fixed elections, just outer limits, currently late 2029, 3 years away. Elections can happen early if the government becomes so unpopular MPs defect, but prediction market Kalshi is currently pegging those odds at just 12%, meaning Britain is probably stuck with the Labour government it hates for another 2.5 years, probably replacing Starmer with more of the same. So how did Britain get into this mess? Over the past 30 years since John Major, both British parties congealed into a single center-left uniparty, basically Hillary Clinton versus Obama, both selling the same menu of migrants, wokeness, and stagnation. Now, once the populists did get traction, it split the vote, handing a freak victory to Labour, who won despite getting just 34% of the vote. So what's next? What's happening in Britain is happening across Europe, a sclerotic uniparty tag-teaming a Soviet administrative state with Soviet censorship, while importing tens of millions of third worlders to replace the native population. In most of Europe, so Germany, France, Benelux, and Austria, mainstream parties are literally uniting in so-called cordon sanitaire to block out populists while criminalizing speech to keep low-information voters away from the wrong thing. This creates a massive barrier to populists who literally have to outvote both major parties in a Soviet censorship regime, which is why the frog has not jumped yet, but it also paralyzes Europe since these grand coalitions of right and left can't get any reform even if the public is enraged when war veterans are living the street while migrants take 6 figures in welfare. This builds the anger to the point that when it bursts, Europe will make Trump look moderate. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Britain's got a ways to go, but the days are numbered for Britain's and Europe's imploding socialists. Democrats are hitting the panic button as Republicans redraw congressional districts to swing up to 19 seats for the midterms and up to 30 seats when the dust settles. Dem House Leader Jeffries calls it shocking. The New York Times says it's a disaster. For CNN's Abby Phillips, quote, "We are in the depths of hell." The reason is redistricting dramatically improves GOP odds of keeping the House in November. Long term, it takes Republicans from winning the House a third of the time to winning the House most of the time. So for those following along at home, for the past 60 years, Democrats gleefully gerrymandered Republican voters into Democrat congressional seats, then cynically used the Civil Rights Act to block Republicans drawing their own districts. As a result, Blue New England has 1 Republican despite 40% of New Englanders voting for Trump, while the South has 24 Democrat seats despite a smaller share of the vote. Now, nationwide, this gives Dems a 30-seat cheat going by red districts in Kamala states versus blue districts in Trump states. 30 seats would swing House control in 1 in 5 elections historically. Well, it means when Republicans do win, liberal rhinos set the agenda like that 1 seat in New England, Susan Collins. They are the swing vote. Now, voters hate gerrymandering. They see it as corrupt, with just 7% of voters saying it should be allowed. But both parties have to do it. You cannot bring a teacup when the other guy's got a knife. So the great gerrymander battle kicked off last year when Texas redrew their map to eliminate up to 5 Democrats. The reason was a letter from Trump's Department of Justice arguing that Texas's old districts were unconstitutional because they drew by race when the Constitution is colorblind. In other words, Trump used the Voting Rights Act against Democrats saying it didn't require Democrats' racist gerrymanders, it bans them. Still, this broke a 65-year tradition of only redrawing after the 10-year census. As one Democrat strategist put it, it was a, quote, nuclear strike. Of course, Democrats sued, taking it all the way to the Supreme Court, who agreed with Trump, at which point the war went hot. Florida immediately redrew 4 seats. Ohio, Louisiana could redraw 2 each. 8 other southern states are trying to redraw, coming to between 17 and 19 seats for the upcoming midterms. Democrats tried tit for tat, but of course they're low on ammo, having already gerrymandered Republicans to near oblivion. Their big hope was Virginia drawing out 5 Republican seats using psychedelic squid-shaped districts reaching out from the deep blue swamp of Northern Virginia. But that was crushed by Virginia's Supreme Court as violating a previous referendum requiring nonpartisan districts, leaving Dems deep in the hole. So as next, things are looking good for the GOP, but even with new districts, November is up against a century-long pattern that the party in power loses the House 90% of the time, presumably because voters forget how much they hated the other guy. So redistricting is bumping Republican odds in November to 25% on prediction market Kalshi, but that's still 3 and 4 odds of a blue House. Much more important is setting a level playing field for future elections where the odds are looking very good. A word from our sponsor. Stocks and even gold are all over the place. If you're ready to diversify, Abundant Minds makes Bitcoin mining simple, transparent, and human. You can deduct every penny thanks to Trump's big beautiful bill. It's a 401k for Bitcoin mining. Founded by husband-wife team Bo and Christine Marie Turner after losing $500,000 to broken promises in the mining industry, Abundant Minds was built to protect investors. You own the machines, and they make it turnkey with hosting in their facilities in Oregon. Pricing is clear with one flat monthly fee and no surprises, and they guarantee uptime so you keep earning day in, day out. If you want easy diversification without pressure, learn more at abundantminds.com/Peter to get some of your first Bitcoin mine for free as a gift to my audience. The biggest risk in Bitcoin isn't volatility, it is custody. Because Bitcoin removes the safety net, there is no bank to call, no reset button if something goes wrong. The reality is, most people are not properly set up. They hold Bitcoin but rely on exchanges, incomplete wallet setups, and have no real plan for privacy or inheritance. This is exactly what the Bitcoin way solves. They help you move from exposure to actual ownership, self-custody done right, privacy, inheritance, even running your own node, all set up with you step by step. They never touch your Bitcoin. They're your support team. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Peter to book a free call and go from where you are today to a much stronger setup. Now back to our show. The United Nations wants $131 trillion in reparations for colonialism and, quote, systemic racism. In its latest trillion-dollar grift, the resolution passed 123-3. The rich countries abstained. The price tag to dismantle racism, according to the UN-linked Brattle Group, is $131 trillion. To be fair, it's less than a gazillion, but it is also more than all the money in the world, not a joke. That 131 includes $26 trillion owed by the U.S., close to $500,000 per household, $24 trillion from Britain, who, fun fact, abolished slavery in a series of wars against Arabs and Africans. Portugal gets off easy, owing just $20 trillion to Brazil, which is $6 million per household in Portugal. Now, this is all on par for the UN's bevy of kleptocracies picking your pocket while dreaming up new and interesting ways to take your constitutional rights. From the World Health Organization's COVID tyranny to global warming to treaties to ban guns, population control, and mass surveillance. But the more important is the premise is backwards. In fact, colonialism is the best thing that ever happened to the Third World. We know this because a pair of MIT economists, including Nobel laureate Daron Acemoglu, crunched the numbers in a 2001 paper that found every prosperous Third World country is prosperous because Europeans showed up. Every collapsed one is collapsed because the Europeans either left too early or they never colonized. To illustrate, when Britain left Hong Kong in 1997, it was 40 times richer than China. Guam, still a U.S. colony, is 10 times richer than independent Philippines. Puerto Rico is by far the richest country in Latin America, and 20 times richer than Haiti, which won its independence before the United States. French Caledonia is 12 times richer than nearby Solomon Islands. France's Caribbean colonies are also 12 times richer than Haiti. Britain's Bermuda is 40 times richer than Haiti and still a colony. India is 10 times richer than never colonized Afghanistan. Demographically similar Pakistan is 5 times richer than Afghanistan. Even within Africa, the last decolonization, 1990 Namibia, is 5 times richer than never colonized Ethiopia. And when apartheid fell, call it internal colonization, South Africa was 20 times richer than next door Mozambique. Spot the pattern. So what accounts for it? Easy rule of law and culture. Ports that are not corrupt, the bourgeois values of honesty, thrift, industry, all of which foster social trust that helps natives stop genociding each other. The rule of law and culture is why the West was rich enough to colonize the Third World as a side gig, and they imposed that law and culture so colonies would prosper enough to generate the taxes it took to run them. The longer colonies had stuck, Singapore or Hong Kong, and early independence like Haiti, or never colonized like Ethiopia, it did not stick. Incidentally, it's not a white thing. It's universal that when rich colonies colonize poor ones, the victims are the biggest beneficiaries. Rome civilized Britain, Sumeria civilized Persia, Japan civilized Okinawa, China civilized its Turks in the Gobi Desert. The difference is today we can measure it, and today we have UN bureaucrats trying to turn it into a $1 trillion hustle running backwards. So its next, colonialism had its brutality, but these pale by orders of magnitude to native brutality. Toss into tech, penicillin, electricity, water filtration, crops that withstand drought, and the West has nothing to apologize for. In fact, reparations should go the other direction. Still, so long as Western education continues pushing Marxism and the UN continues trying to monetize it, hold on to your wallets and hold on to your rights. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.